I'm Tom Massey, a landscape designer, author, and sometimes TV presenter.
And I'm Tayshan Hayden-Smith, creative director, activist, and mischief maker. And this is Tea in the Garden, a show where we share a cuppa and spill the tea with a special guest to find out what their garden and the outdoors means to them.
Today we're heading into the garden of an actor who starred on the stage and on screen. It's actor Indira Varma.
You may well know Indira from her role as Ilaria Sands in the little-known TV show Game of Thrones, or as Zoe Luther in Luther, or as the Duchess in a recent episode of Doctor Who.
And when it comes to theatre, she's won an Olivier Award and shared the stage with everyone from Ralph Fiennes to Emilia Clarke.
And we're looking forward to seeing what's going on in Indira's London garden.
This episode of Tea in the Garden is sponsored by Chase Gin and Vodka. Chase is all about reconnecting with nature and bringing a little slice of the countryside to wherever you are, even in the heart of the city. You can find more details, including some brilliant cocktail recipes, at the link in the description.
But now, let's head on over to meet our guest. We'll see you in Indira's garden.
Indira, thanks for having us so much in your garden. It's amazing to be here and see everything that you've done with it. Well, the first thing that we like to ask is, what kind of tea do you drink and how do you take it?
Well, currently, in the afternoon, I don't love tea.
Yeah.
I was brought up with tea.
Yeah.
As a half Indian person. Every day it was Builders with a sugar and milk. But now I like, in the afternoon, I will probably have Lady Grey. Okay. You know, it's like that Earl Grey, but citrusy.
Yeah, lighter.
Yeah,
floral.
No milk, very, very weak. And this is my mum's little spoon that's actually a strainer.
It's like a kind
It's not even a strainer. It's, you put the tea in there, the loose leaf in there, and then
you just leave it in there.
You can leave it in there. It looks like a spoon. It's kind of brilliant.
It's really cool.
It's kind of brilliant.
Yeah.
If you're not really a tea, do you drink coffee, or are you?
I love coffee.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So coffee in the morning, tea in the afternoon.
And not even tea sometimes, to be fair.
Just coffee straight up.
Yeah. But no, I can't have a coffee after 12, and I can only do 2 a day max.
But talking about the garden, tell us about this space, about everything you've done here.
Yeah, I don't know all that much about gardens, but my dad was a bit green-fingered. But he learned by himself, you know, he's sort of self-taught. And I feel like I've inherited his appreciation. And so whenever we've looked for a new home, not that it's been that often, but I had to make sure that it was a south or a west-facing garden.
Yeah.
And I wanted there to be enough space. I mean, this is London and we're not super rich, but enough space to have a nice little garden. And I think of it as a little jewellery box. I love scented flowers. That's the legacy of my dad. And I'm going to digress very quickly. When my dad died, there was this, we had his funeral, and the morning of his funeral, you walk out of your home, my dad's home, and there was a rose that was in bloom, and it was a scented rose, and it broke me because he'd planted that rose and he appreciated scent. And I could, you know how you sort of have, there's a sense memory, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not only is it the smell of that rose, but also remembering his relationship to what that rose was. And it was so nice. And I took a little cutting and put it on his coffin and stuff like that. But so it was really important for me to have roses and scented things. So jasmine and verbena, even
salvia.
Yeah, anything that smells good, you know?
It's beautiful how plants can tell those stories. And every time you come into your garden, or anyone comes into your garden, whether they like it or not, they're getting a bit of your dad's memory, you know, and I think that's a really nice thing.
I think it's been scientifically proven smell is one of the most powerful emotive senses. So if you smell something, it can really transport you. And you talking about that reminded me.
Here, have a sniff. There's that one and there's that one.
Yeah, it just has a very, like, already you can kind of sense the memories. But it reminds me, at a time I visited a refugee camp in 2018. And a lot of the people there, it was for a charity called the Lemon Tree Trust, and they work with refugees to encourage people to garden. People are already gardening in the camps, but they help and they provide seeds and they run garden competitions to make it kind of interactive and fun and playful. But a lot of the stories people were telling were the power of collecting plant, fleeing for their lives, but having the presence of mind to collect a cutting or take a plant with them, plant it when they arrived, often one of the first things that they would do, and that would then transport them back to better times and memories of home. I think it's the power of plants to really transport that is quite amazing, really, and quite powerful, as you were saying with your dad. It's just something I think we overlook often. And, if you're so busy or hectic, you don't spend the time, but...
Yeah, I think that's amazing, that. And there's two things I want to, if I can retain it, my two thoughts. But one is my dad had a chamomile lawn, which took forever. I think it grows really slowly.
Difficult to establish.
Yeah, but it was a big, round, it was like that sized chamomile lawn, and in the front garden, and he would insist on, he said, take off your shoes, take off your socks. Please walk on it, sit on it. And that sort of thing of sitting on a chamomile lawn was decadence for him, but because it was so evocative. But then the other thing was, like, my mum and her friend, they always used to go around like stately homes and parks and gardens and stuff like that. Autumn, you collect the seeds, a little bit of robbing on the side. But it's free, it's all free, and I just love that. It should be,
shouldn't it? I mean, why wouldn't you let people take seeds?
Exactly.
It's something I think sharing with your neighbours. I think you mentioned your neighbour gives you apples, and it's that kind of idea that nature, you own nature. No one should own nature, but it should be free and open, shouldn't it?
Definitely.
That's the beauty of community spaces.
Yeah.
Like local community. I don't know how many you've got around here. But
we've got an amazing one that's not far, actually, and it's brilliant. I wish also, that thing of having allotments. I wish I could had the time to have an allotment.
Yeah.
There's near our Ali Pali market, farmers market. During the season, there's a guy who sells all the stuff that's extra surplus from the allotments, and it's brilliant because and the money goes back into the allotments, and you're eating food that's just been freshly grown there.
Yeah, I think seasonal, fresh produce. I think in your garden you've got blackcurrants and you've got strawberries and, just even those little things. You gave us both a blackcurrant and just that homegrown sense of pride,
Yeah, it's really funny.
Even if you got 5.
I know. My dream would be to have a little vegetable garden, to have enough space for that.
I see a few bits. Where's the nasturtium right here?
Yeah.
Got nasturtium?
I've got a few herbs. I'm obsessed at the moment with marjoram.
Yeah.
I love that.
Pizza.
Tomato,
Just
salad,
tomato.
Onion, tomato, marjoram. So delicious.
Good. What, olive oil?
Olive oil.
Salt?
Obviously. Bay leaf, it's all a bit obvious. Rosemary, thyme.
Rosemary just there?
Yeah.
Lavender you can flavour.
Lavender. Yeah, I put some on your apricot tart earlier. I put a bay leaf in there.
Nice.
Yeah.
It was delicious, by the way, that apricot tart. So, looking around the garden, there's all these amazing bits of artwork, and can you tell us about them?
So my parents were both artists. My dad was an illustrator, my mum was a graphic designer, but they kind of came through London and art school in the 60s, 70s, which I think there was a movement towards making everything yourself.
Yeah.
So my mum had a loom, she had a spinning wheel. Even we used to collect wool on barbed wire. I was brought up in Bath, so no barbed wire or sheep in London. But, we used to collect wool from the barbed wire, card it, and then she would spin it. I used to have a jumper that was made from that, and it was like a piece of armour. But also she would her and her friends, I suppose it's quite hippie, really. It's what people are back into now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Dyeing things with red onion skin or lichen, lichen.
Yeah.
No, as I say, there's like a subconscious kind of link to nature there. Like, by making your own stuff, you're kind of already kind of dealing with natural materials and handling them and designing and being like resourceful.
And then also they were always making things all the time that were not necessarily about drawing. So my mum and dad both did ceramics, just for fun, really, evening class type thing. So my mum's made pots and the funny head with the flowers in, and my dad made the head sculpture over there, and the funny bowl with the chicken on the top, that's my dad made that. And then there's a bit of that, and I like having their stuff around. I love, who's that female sculptor? Barbara Hepworth.
Yeah.
Have you been to her garden?
I have, in St Ives.
Yeah, I think, I'm really inspired by that thing of, I love gardens, I love flowers and what they do, but I also love the art within it, or objects. And there's another place which I love called Kettle's Yard. I think it's in Cambridge. I'm going to get all the facts wrong, but look it up. It's called Kettle's Yard.
Yeah.
But it's, I think it was a curator of the Tate back in the 60s, and it was his own house, him and his wife, and they got an architect to essentially put a few cattle sheds, old cattle barns together, and make this beautiful 60s kind of cool house. And of course he collected incredible art, but also he collected little sculpture and pebbles and stones and sticks, because like you find driftwood and it looks like a sculpture, piece of art. And I love the marriage between seeing the natural beauty in something that nature's made, and how humans have made their interpretation of something beautiful. And I'd like more of that, really.
I think that's why art in gardens works so well, because most art or most kind of sculpture is inspired in some way by nature, whether it's human form or plant form or natural patterns or rhythms. I just think it creates a really interesting juxtaposition often. And I love what you've done here with all the, just having so many objects and all your found stones that you've got with the holes in. You just have, even if you weren't here, I think we get a sense of your personality just from being in this space. Yeah,
I feel like nowadays, is it bad to collect stones, from different places? We shouldn't really do that, should we?
I think a few is probably all right.
I've been taking massive balls.
You've got another whole garden behind there. Is it a quarry?
Yeah. Last year we went to Barcelona and to see the Gaudi Cathedral, which
it's still being built.
Nearly finished.
Is it? Yeah,
I think it's got 2 years left.
Yeah.
But the interior is like a forest.
Really? I didn't actually go in. I should have.
You've got to go in next time. Because his pillars look like trees that have grown up naturally up like that. It's unbelievable. And then there's an amazing museum attached to it, and all his inspiration is from plant forms, of whether it's the way something grows, whether it's a nut, whether it's any natural form, basically. It's amazing. It's worth going to.
Have you been to Barcelona?
I've been to Barcelona, but I was too young to appreciate it with a lens of the architecture or the nature. But I'd love to go back. And actually, I'm not so well travelled. I mean, I've gone to a few places and I haven't explored too much. So I'm looking forward to. I'm making a mental note of all these things that you're mentioning.
Yeah, honestly, it's amazing.
And being here is like a holiday.
Definitely.
So the garden here, I mean, this is such an amazing space connected to the house. It feels very cohesive. The juxtaposition between the two is entertaining, something that you like to say. It feels quite set up for having a cup of tea or having friends out.
One day I'd really like to have a massive house with
I'm going to say massive house party.
That has been done. But I dream of having massive tables.
Yeah, banquet size. Yeah.
Barn-sized rooms with all that kind of thing. But actually, we've had loads of fun out here.
I think that pigeon's having fun.
We've actually got a robin who comes. He's quite a motley character. As in his colouring is not usual. It's quite weird. Yeah, I love that. And also, this is really nice in the evening because it gets the evening light. It's really nice.
Yeah, it's nice sitting here in the sun right now. It's just a very nice space to sit and feel. I don't know, I always think it's interesting, that connection between indoors and out. And this feels like a very, there's space that you can feel inside, but also you can just come out here and lift around in the garden.
Filled with plants as well.
Yeah, a little bit. I've got a plant pot I want to show you afterwards, which is by Martha Freud, with just an asparagus fern in it. But the quote that she's put on it is, "They tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds." You know that? It's an amazing proverb. I'm not sure where from.
It's one that I use quite often.
Is it?
Yeah, but I love that so much.
So I think that's a really nice segue into our next section, talking about seeds, about roots. Can you tell us about your roots? You know, why are you so interested in gardening? What got you to this garden here?
Well, my parents had a really great garden. It wasn't, I mean, I say it's a great garden, but I think it was because it was a useful garden. My mum sort of did more of the front. It was on 2 levels. The garden itself wasn't, the house is on 2 levels. So the front garden's up, further up, and the back gardens was massive. But my dad had a vegetable garden, essentially, and we ate everything from that garden. But also he was into all the scented stuff, and he really experimented with different types of basil, and he, he was Indian, so he was used to a different kind of vegetation, and what appealed to him, I don't know, he was like a tourist, I guess. Both my parents were like tourists in England, and my mum's Swiss, dad Indian, and there's a real appreciation of what the English do. I say English rather than British. English gardens are classic, aren't they?
Yeah, all over the world.
All over the world.
It's kind of, English gardens are famed, aren't they, as being these amazing, kind of sought after.
So is it a real blend of all those cultures kind of in one place?
It wasn't like, I think he had a tulsi, a neem tree a neem shrub in a pot, chilies, you know, things that would be cultural. Yeah, but also useful because they're herbs, they're useful herbs. And he was very into Ayurvedic. I mean, the thing is, he wasn't into Ayurvedic medicine. It was just part of his culture, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so if it was winter, you don't eat a banana because it's a cold giving fruit, apparently, And so all this stuff about turmeric, that was part of just how he functioned. And now it's coming back and I'm going, Dad, I wish I'd listened to you, I'm sorry. You know, not really, but you know.
Downing your turmeric and banana.
But then he'd do things like, he'd really experiment with, he ate a melon once and kept the seed and was always germinating things and...
Sounds like you.
Trying things. But it's brilliant because but he didn't know that melons grew on the ground.
Yeah, vines.
So he'd put it in a, you know, like an orange, they used to have those plastic orange nets. So as soon as it appeared, he had it hanging in this net. But it was, so that was the experimental nature and of trial and error, I think.
How involved did you get at the time?
Not really. I was more picking the wild strawberries and I think one of my earliest memories was California poppies at the bottom of the garden. And I have this vivid memory of, you know, before they flower, they have like a little pointy hat. But there's a sweet spot moment where you can actually pull that hat off without destroying the plant. And I remember pulling these little hats and then watching them unfurl.
Did you wear them? No fair.
That's more.
But I think that childlike memory of things that you've experienced, you know, that stays really powerfully with you, doesn't it? Because I'm sure if you see that now, it takes you right back to that time when you were doing that as a child. You know, it's just...
You've got wild strawberries just behind you now.
That smell of wild strawberries and the flavour of a wild strawberry is better than a big fat strawberry.
Yeah, the big fat sort of sour ones grown in, I don't know where they're grown. But
El Santa. Santa strawberries.
It's the wild strawberries. I guess to grow them commercially, though, you need to grow so many.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they're not.
I had 3 this year.
3? 2 blackcurrants, 2 strawberries. It's lucky you gave us 2 of them. I feel very honoured to have...
We had 100% of the
yield. Growing food, I mean, is cooking something that is... It sounds like your dad might have been a cook as well, was he?
Yeah, but we were vegetarian growing up. But, you know, it was like we had potatoes and onions and garlic and it's all basic veg, you know. But also plum trees, apples, pears, raspberries, and then you go blackberry picking. That's always, every year, got to go blackberry picking. And then, you know, the green beans, the courgettes and all that stuff. I love that. I'd love to be able to do that.
You've got quite a lot in a small space, and you've done well to pack in a lot of edible things.
Yeah.
And it's something that I always try and do with gardens that I design, is include edibles, just because it makes it more fun. You know, to walk around to say, here's a blackcurrant or here's a strawberry.
Yeah.
It makes it more engaging for you and for people that, might be visiting. And you can say in your tart, you put a bay leaf from your garden.
Yes,
It's something that I think you could feel quite proud of.
Yeah.
In those conversations, like loads of people use fruits, vegetables, edibles in different ways. It's like, so the way that you use the bay leaves is completely different to you.
Yeah.
And maybe myself, and it's really interesting to see how different people use different foods.
There's something so satisfying about picking something off your own plant and putting it in a pot.
Yeah.
And then flavouring your food.
And can be a really unusual or powerful or amazing flavour that just adds something so different that you can't necessarily... I don't know, I always think it's interesting to grow things you can't buy in supermarkets.
Yeah,
as well.
I'd love to do more of that. I had a friend who had an allotment and would get heirloom this and heirloom that, and I think that would be really great.
Yeah.
But going back to the smell thing, I think there's something about, like, the blackcurrant. You've rubbed that leaf. And
incredible smell,
and people, I love doing... with my kid, I used to do smell adventures around the garden. It's like, sit there, I'm going to bring a tray and we're going to close your eyes. What do you think that smells like? And I love doing
I think that's so amazing. Your child will now remember that for their whole life and might be telling people in the future, like you're telling us about your dad, the memories of what that means to them.
It's funny because the smell of geranium reminds me of my mum's bubble bath.
Really?
Yeah, so, and like all these smells that pivot around nature and memories and stories.
It's true.
Yeah, it really does bring back some of those kind of good memories of people and places. And
there's something I think, and I think this is a legacy of my dad, is there's something magical about nature. He was like a child, really, in it. That sounds terrible, but he was childlike in his love of things, and he's definitely given that joy to me. And like, for example, he built his own like greenhouse, but then he insisted on having a grapevine coming through it. And so it was growing. And of course it releases all its sugars. But he would eat everything. So he'd eat rose petals. Try this. It's a rose. Or he had an indoor plant. Taste the sugar that's coming from this plant. It's very like visceral and sensory. And I love that.
This episode of Tea in the Garden is brought to you by Chase Gin and Vodka.
just like us, Chase is inspired by the wild, with flavours that bring a slice of the countryside to you, no matter where you are.
We've been talking about entertaining in the outdoors, and that doesn't have to be your garden. I'm sure plenty of us have spent summer afternoons in the park, on the beach, or camping at festivals. So, we thought we'd share with you a drink that's perfect for an evening with friends, using Chase's original vodka. This drink is a blackberry spritz. I'm going to show you how to make one. Taysh, take a seat. All it takes is a wine glass. Pour in 35ml of the Chase vodka. Add 20ml of blackberry liqueur. Add 20ml of cranberry juice. Gently stir that together. And pop in some ice. Add 50ml of English sparkling wine. And top it up with some soda water and some blackberries to finish it off. Entertaining outdoors is such a good way to meet people, to chat, to just walk in nature, feel calm, relaxed, and I think you can be more honest.
It's funny how I use exactly the same spaces, but in completely different ways as I've got older. Now I'll really tune into the plants that are around me.
Yeah, I think it's even in urban spaces, you've got rivers, you've got canals, you've got parks, you've got so many spaces where you can feel connected with nature.
Yeah, and even in a small flat with a balcony or even a window, where there's light, there's life. So, yeah, really connecting with nature and being amongst nature will just soften up your experience, your general experience, your life.
I think it's so nice just to hang out outside.
Oh, look at us now.
I think in this country, although we're famed as gardeners, we are also so disconnected from nature in so many ways. And in a lot of other cultures, there's a lot more connection with the food that you grow and the food that you eat.
Yeah.
Whereas I think we, in a lot of ways, a lot of children don't know where food comes from.
Yes.
They don't understand that you can grow. I think you mentioned it earlier, that Ribena is from blackcurrants,
Yes.
and you can grow blackcurrants in your own garden,
Also,
relatively easily.
You walk through spaces when you're a kid and it's like, don't touch this, don't do this, don't do that. and we've all become quite sterile in the way that we engage.
And scared,
nature.
I think, as well,
Yeah.
scared of nature.
And dirty. Why is it that people call earth dirty?
Yeah, dirt, yeah.
It's not dirt.
No.
Yeah.
Mud isn't dirt.
There's organisms in soil that, working with soil releases organisms that are good for you. It's just been proven getting your hands in the soil de-stresses you. So I think that's why it's so important to maintain that connection to nature. But in the modern world with, phones, screens, laptops, busy lives, it's so easy to lose that.
The language and narrative is so crucial. The way that your dad spoke about nature, what it sounds like was quite poetic.
Yeah.
In a way, like you said, he was quite childlike when it came to his things he loved. And I guess that would have captivated you and inspired you.
Yeah.
So is that something that you passed down in that way?
I mean, it's interesting, is that I'm just trying to think, because I'd like to think I do. If learning a language, a second language, if you have a parent that speaks to you in another language, you learn it as a second language, so it's never as good as your first language. And I'm slightly worried that because our garden isn't bigger, I don't have as much time in the garden, that I'm not passing such a concentrated form down. Like, I didn't really do any gardening until I had a garden of my own. I think my first plant was a papyrus, in a pot indoors. Maybe my daughter will, when she doesn't have a garden, she'll realise, I miss
that.
something I miss, and then I'd like to do that,
But that was, my experience was quite, I guess, subconscious. Or
Yeah.
not so hands-on, not quite passive. Gardening was never a word used in our home, but it was just those little bits of magic that my mum used to kind of, like the bird song, or where smells was a big thing. And so these things do, I guess, the seeds are planted.
I think so.
Yeah.
And even when she was little, making cupcakes and then getting pansies and putting them on top, or something, nasturtiums, or putting in the salad, or decorating it with stuff from the garden. Chives and whatever,
I mean, gardening itself, I think some people do find it quite stressful sometimes. And you mentioned earlier slugs.
I was stressed about you coming, because
But how do you, I suppose, generally enjoy it? How do you deal with things like slugs, or do you just kind of let them?
I have a phobia with slugs, actually, about slugs. I really do.
Really? Yeah.
I find them
The thought of stepping on a slug.
I've done it before in bare feet, and it's not fun.
No, I've got a phobia of stepping on frogs. I think that's
have you done that?
I've never done it, but I just in my mind it's like the worst thing to step on.
I would have thought the frog would move.
Well, I don't know.
Depends
Probably.
how small.
Maybe
Or how big your feet are.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think stepping on a frog or a slug.
We've got a frog in the garden.
Have you?
Or maybe it's a toad, I'm not sure.
Just don't put a pond in your garden.
I feel like this year the slugs have just been
Slugs are unbeatable.
unbeatable.
A lot of people just go out and literally by hand
I can't
pick them up.
touch them.
Yeah. You send husband out? Or?
Or just have his patch as the sacrificial patch. Just
I wish it worked like that.
way.
Yeah.
I mean, thank God we've got a frog somewhere.
Yeah, frogs are great.
Yeah.
Frogs do eat slugs. So.
We just need a colony of frogs.
Just don't step on them.
Yeah. Next time I come, just frogs everywhere. My worst nightmare.
No, I don't do enough of that.
But then you can also just concede that the garden is also for slugs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They have a job. I've learned. I've learned that they have a job, which is to eat all the dead stuff.
Yeah, everything in the garden has a job.
Yeah.
And I think, it's all part of the ecosystem of the garden.
Yes.
And again, that does take us quite nicely into our next section, which is all about growth. When did you first have your own garden? When did you come to London? What was your journey?
When I came to London for drama school, and actually the first house which we all shared, loads of us, we had a garden, but we didn't do any gardening. It was horrible.
Was that a student house?
Yeah.
I had a student house garden.
Oh my God. That was good for barbecues. It was just, you're not going to invest in that.
No.
Me and a friend shared a flat for a bit, and we had a terrace. And she insisted on using it more than I did, and would do like little window boxes with shells and things like that in, and it was kind of fun. And we still share a love of gardens and beautiful things. It's summer, it's London, everyone's redoing their roof or their
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you couldn't get better weather than to redo your roof and
exactly.
make a lot of noise in doing so.
It's a massive woodpecker.
Sounds of nature. This is London nature.
Yeah. Roof terraces, I've always had pots and indoor plants as well. And then first garden was this stunning mature garden, actually, I inherited. And I wanted to maintain that, and that was lovely.
Did you consciously put time towards the garden, or was it very much a kind of, oh, that needs doing, or?
Yeah, it was more of a, oh, look, that needs doing, that's overgrown, that's strangling that, or, you know.
Because you've got a busy life, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to find the time. And how do you balance that, and how does having a garden help with that hectic?
I still think that nature is the most sort of grounding thing you can have. And I don't think it's just if you've grown up with it and it's part of your upbringing, whatever. I think it's got to be like that for everyone. You know, if you get into the habit of going for a walk in a park with trees or anything. I was in a flat and I had to walk to the tube through Highgate Wood. And if you do that every day for a year, you see it changing. You see things growing and dying, and that in itself is centering and makes you think things are going to be all right, because nothing stays the same. Everything changes. Things die and then they come back.
Yeah, there's some people that will just walk through spaces and not really take a second to notice their surroundings, even if they walk through it every day.
Not even see it, even.
Yeah.
You know, on autopilot, you're just.
I mean, how many people do you see just like looking down at their phones on their way from A to B?
Yeah.
But I feel like maybe your parents had that influence on you to just see that.
Yes,
that inspiration in nature.
Like the chamomile lawn you were talking about, you know, slowing down, lying in the lawn and just sensory. But I think that idea of being present is something you talk about a lot. It's just that sense of being in the moment and not being caught up in your thoughts, or, you know, what's the next job? What have I got to do? What's on my to-do list? What's buzzing in my phone?
Why did I say that? What am I going to say then? You know, or whatever. Yeah. Or I need to call that person, or that person's calling me and I don't want to talk to them. I mean, I grew up without a smartphone, and then, now we're so connected to everything all the time. I mean, you probably grew up with a smartphone from birth, right? How old were you when you had your first?
I think maybe like 13, 14.
Wow.
So like 3 years ago.
I grew up with technology growing up itself.
Are you good at turning off from it?
Technology intimidates me in my mind. I know it's a necessity to try and, do what I do for work, but also stay connected with a lot of people. It is quite overwhelming. I would love to just sit in nature all day and do absolutely nothing, but that's just not how my mind is wired. So I'm not very good at switching off. No. Are you? How do you find it?
I don't know. Like, I think I love to be like, if I stop and I can look at the fact that what's it called, the agapanthus leaves, the shadow are on the pot.
Yeah,
and every day they've grown a couple of inches. They get a bit chunkier, and I could look at that for ages. Or just the clouds moving, whatever. And the light changes all the time, and how, like the shadow of a leaf, what shape does that do on a wall? And then the sun goes behind a cloud and it fades, it comes back. I'm boring myself, I'm boring. But actually, I love that.
No, I love hearing you talk about, the way you describe things is very evocative. You've talked about your parents being very creative. Do you feel you're a creator? I know you with your work, but do you physically make things?
I used to all the time. I say that with regret because I feel I try it, like I bake and I cook. So we always cook from scratch. We always make birthday cards generally, and things like that, but not enough, not anymore. And
There's a few spaces here still.
I know, I certainly are. I feel like I need more time.
Yeah.
I need more time at the moment.
Not the plant. Have you got any time? You could add some time. You get to travel a lot with work, obviously, and is that something? Do you find going to new places, seeing new things, does that recharge you? Does that inspire you?
Definitely. I mean, Of course. And let's be specific about gardens. Because, I mean, to go to just talking about Barcelona and going to see the Gaudi and seeing how influenced he was by nature, that's amazing. But then, going to Seville and Spain, other places in Spain, and the Alhambra, where you see what they've done with gardens and that Islamic influence and what they've done with water is incredible. And then, going to India, so when my dad's brother, they first had a house, some house, whatever, this new house, this is decades ago. My dad really wanted to influence them with the way they gardened because they didn't particularly garden. It's, water is obviously a scarcity. He was adamant that plant a mango tree, get a guava in there. You need a papaya tree, get the jasmine, get the rose, get the frangipani. And then we'd go back 5 years later and it had started. And then there was this appreciation. You learn to love this new thing, don't you?
You say, in India, it's very practical rather than... It's like when you walk through an English garden, I would say typically...
Ornamental.
It's ornamental, not so practical, not very resourceful. Yeah. Whereas in India, it probably is quite practical.
But also, I think because my dad is was whimsical, there was also that thing of, the rose is, we used to also, I'm obsessed, as you probably can tell, with smells. Scent, I should say.
London's full of smells.
But we used to go to these small perfume shops in India where they do attar of whatever.
Roses.
And you buy a bottle that big of the oil, the essential oil. It's unbelievable. And so that notion of having this stuff grows here. Let's have it in the garden is,
So what's your top 3 essential oils?
Top 3 or top combo?
Well, I love rose geranium.
So that sounds like you.
You could take it in your pocket with you.
It's really uplifting. It's really uplifting.
Sounds like me, what is it?
You said geranium.
I thought you were saying...
Like you, your plant, your
it's a
spirit plant.
Lavender, you need a lavender for sleep and all the rest of it.
Rosemary for focus, apparently, is really good.
But it's quite a harsh smell. It's quite harsh, I feel.
Yeah, quite sort of...
I've got into orange blossom.
I don't think you can get the oil of that.
I was in Morocco. I got this oil, which is orange blossom oil.
But was it?
Maybe not.
Was it?
Maybe
because
not.
I've been to
Snake
Morocco.
oil. Yeah.
I've been to Morocco. And I tried to find the orange blossom, and I think it's mixed.
Maybe it is.
I think, sorry.
That's okay.
So burst Tayshan.
Because I felt like I'm obsessed with orange blossom. And I think the best scent is, Santa Maria di Novella. It's a perfumer's. There's one on Piccadilly. Check it out. The problem with orange blossom is it's not like rose that is a heavy lingering scent or oud or something like that, which lasts a long time. Orange blossom is gone.
Fades,
it fades really quickly.
I'm going to do a bit more research myself.
Really.
Next time you see me, Tom, I'm going to be smelling.
Because, I tell you, neroli is... I love this. I sound like such a nerd. This is my nerd. I am now a nerd.
It's your mastermind subject.
Because neroli is, I think, the closest, essential scent, whatever, that you can get, which is from the orange, but they take it from the blossom, the skin, but also the leaf. And that lasts, whereas the actual orange blossom is very fleeting.
I think we've been through a really nice journey through your history, through your gardening experience, everything that inspires you and how you interact with nature. But one question that we like to ask everyone before we go is, what do you hope to nurture? That could be in your garden, in your life, in your career.
This is a really difficult question. I think it's just to have and to nurture more joy.
That's a nice one.
Yeah.
That's a really nice one, yeah.
I think you get joy from nature, and whether that is wild nature, whether it means going to...
Swim in the sea.
Swim in the sea, go wild swimming or whatever, or cultivate your own. This gives me joy. And I think it gives my friends joy. And also, you know what I think? Just a little digression, going back to slugs, which don't give me joy.
Cultivate your slugs.
I feel like there's too much pressure on being brilliant at things.
Definitely.
And, you know, I felt the pressure of you're coming to my house to look at my garden, and suddenly it's like, but I'm not a proper...
You should come to my house and Tayshan. Come see our garden.
Don't come to mine.
But, you know, it's that thing of, I don't even want to be amateur. It's just like a thing that gives me joy.
Yeah.
It's not an end result. It's to be in the present and to enjoy it and the process. It's all about the process.
I think that's what we wanted to really capture in this series of talks with people in their own gardens, is that sense that, you know, this idea of perfection or magazine gardens or social media, or even who a gardener is. You know, what does it mean? Are you a gardener if you just simply have a houseplant?
What you described is where I exist, because I make a point of that. I'm not an expert. I make a point of that. I probably don't know what I'm talking about, and I probably don't know every plant, all the Latin names, but I found joy in doing what I'm doing, being amongst nature, spending time with my children in nature, learning about the history, the culture, the community through nature. And it's like, that was a gateway into joy. And I was like, well, why isn't this created? Why aren't these pathways created at a younger age? Why can't more people have this joy? So I think joy is at the crux of what we try and do, isn't it?
Yeah. And also, like, to create more joy for me within the garden, but also, like, I can bring that into my work. Not talking about the garden, but, you know, like just...
Yeah, you can take that feeling and that experience and that your sense of well-being and joy into whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Nurturing yourself and that sense of joy, I think it can be so beneficial in so many different ways, can't it?
Yes. And I think probably, I feel like this has been a bit of a sort of a tribute to my dad in a funny sort of way, to see the beauty in everything. And that is to see joy and to find joy. And this is not a cult. But, you know, and I think it goes back to being in the present. Like, because if you're here right now, you go, I see whatever is beautiful here, you know, which is, it's just us here chatting, you know, whatever.
It's that childlike sense of wonder, isn't it, as well, and nurturing that, making sure that you don't ever lose that. I think both of us are, you know, I've got a new child and Tayshan's got two, and you've got, you know, children as well. And it's something I think that, you know, not losing that, trying to never lose that even as an adult, I think is really important.
Definitely.
Joy is just infectious as well. It's like if you're joyful, then people will catch that vibe from you as well.
I think so.
Indira, thank you so much for having us. It's been lovely to share a cup of tea with you and hear about everything, you know, that you're doing with your garden and how you got here as well. Where can people follow you and find out what you're up to?
I'm just on Instagram, and it's Indira Varma.
Nice.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for having us.
Oh, yeah.
So it's so lovely to hear about Indira's garden, all the connections she's made, the connection to her parents, the tribute to her dad, you know, all that really amazing history that she's built up in that tiny space.
And what I thought was really beautiful and resonated with me definitely is that nurturing joy, and how, you know, joy is something, it's not always present, but it's something that we should all try and aspire to get to, you know, and I think hearing that from Indira was really reassuring.
Yeah, more joy in all of our lives. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Tea in the Garden. This episode was made possible by our sponsors at Chase Gin and Vodka and their flavours inspired by the wild. Please always drink responsibly.
Don't forget to follow, subscribe, like, and all of that good stuff, and check out more details in the episode show notes.
We'll see you next time on Tea in the Garden.